In the grand tapestry of history, certain figures emerge not merely as rulers, but as archetypes. They become vessels for our deepest questions about power, knowledge, and the human condition. Few embody this more profoundly than the third king of Israel, a man whose name is echoed through millennia as a synonym for profound insight. King Solomon. His story is not just a chronicle of a golden age, but a deep, contemplative study of the very nature of wisdom itself, its acquisition, its application, and its perilous burdens. We journey back, not just to recount a life, but to ponder the weight of knowing. The tale begins not with a crown, but with a choice. A divine visitation in a dream at Gibeon, where the young Solomon, newly anointed to lead a burgeoning nation, is offered anything his heart desires. Riches, long life, the vanquishing of his enemies? Solomon, in an act that would define his reign, asks for none of these. Instead, he petitions for an understanding heart to judge his people, to discern between good and evil. This plea for wisdom, this humble recognition of the immense responsibility of leadership, was the foundational act upon which his legend was built. It was a request that pleased the heavens, and the gift was granted in abundance, along with the riches and honor he had not sought. This was not the cunning of a politician or the strategy of a general, but a deeper, more resonant sagacity, a wisdom rooted in a desire for justice and righteous governance. This divine endowment was not a mere abstract concept. It manifested in the very fabric of his leadership. The most famous testament to this, a story whispered from generation to generation, is that of the two women and the living child. Here, we see Solomon's judgment in its most raw and theatrical form. Two mothers, one child, a claim born of tragedy and desperation. There is no DNA evidence, no witness to the shadowed events of the night. Solomon is faced with an impasse, a Gordian knot of maternal grief and deceit. His solution is, on its surface, brutal and shocking. Divide the child in two. It is a pronouncement designed not to be carried out, but to pierce the veil of lies. It is a test of the heart. The true mother, in her agony, would rather surrender her son than see him harmed, while the pretender, consumed by envy, agrees to the horrific division. In that moment of visceral reaction, the truth is laid bare. Solomon's ruling was not just clever. It was a profound insight into the elemental nature of love and loss. It demonstrated a wisdom that could navigate the labyrinth of human emotion to find the singular, shining thread of truth. This single act solidified his reputation throughout Israel and beyond, a king whose judgment was not merely learned, but divinely inspired. Under his guidance, Israel entered an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. The kingdom expanded, its influence reaching from the Euphrates to the borders of Egypt. Great building projects were undertaken, the most significant of which was the construction of the first temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent edifice of cedar, cypress, and gold, a permanent dwelling for the Ark of the Covenant, and a central point of worship for the entire nation. This was more than an architectural feat. It was the physical manifestation of a nation's spiritual identity, a testament to Solomon's ability to organize, to inspire, and to marshal vast resources toward a singular, sacred purpose. His court became a center for learning, culture, and diplomacy. Dignitaries, like the Queen of Sheba, traveled vast distances, drawn by tales of his unparalleled intellect, leaving his presence breathless, and laden with gifts, confirming that the reality of his wisdom far surpassed the legend. He composed thousands of proverbs and songs, his mind a fertile ground for observations on nature, humanity, and the divine order. His leadership was the engine of a golden age, a time when justice, peace, and prosperity seemed to flow effortlessly from the throne. Yet within this dazzling zenith of power and knowledge, the seeds of a profound and tragic decline were being sown. The wisdom that had built a kingdom would slowly begin to challenge the man. The very gift he had been granted, an insatiable intellect and a capacity for immense understanding became a gateway to excess. The king who had asked only for wisdom was now surrounded by unimaginable wealth. The architect of a holy temple, now constructing palaces for his foreign wives, and, eventually, shrines to their foreign gods. The narrative of his life takes a somber turn, a cautionary tale about the seductions of plenty. The Bible speaks of 700 wives and 300 concubines, many of whom were foreign princesses, unions meant to forge political alliances. But these alliances came at a spiritual cost. These women, it is written, turned his heart away. The king who had once conversed with God in dreams now found his devotion divided, his focus fractured. The clarity of his youthful plea for an understanding heart became clouded by the complexities of political compromise and personal desire. The man who knew everything seemed to forget the one thing that mattered most, the singular devotion from which his wisdom first sprang. This descent was not a sudden fall, but a slow, creeping erosion of the soul. His immense knowledge, which had once served his people, now seemed to serve only his own intellectual and sensual appetites. The book of Ecclesiastes, traditionally attributed to Solomon in his later years, reads like the diary of a man who has had everything done, everything and learned everything, only to find it all to be vanity and a chasing after the wind. It is a profound, melancholic meditation on the limits of human knowledge and worldly pleasure. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity, the author laments. The pursuit of wisdom, of pleasure, of great works, it all leads to the same place, the grave. The man who could discern the truth in the hearts of others seems to have lost the path to truth within his own. The weight of knowing, the burden of having experienced all that life has to offer, led not to lasting contentment, but to a deep philosophical weariness. The wisest man on earth was confronted with the ultimate, humbling truth that human understanding, no matter how vast, cannot fill the void in the human spirit. And so, the legacy of Solomon is a dual one. He remains the architect of Israel's golden age, the paragon of judicial wisdom, the sage whose proverbs continue to guide and instruct. But he is also a stark warning. His life demonstrates that knowledge without devotion, power without restraint, and alliances without integrity can lead even the greatest of figures astray. The kingdom he had so brilliantly built and unified would fracture after his death, a direct consequence of the spiritual compromises made in his later years. His story serves as a timeless mirror, reflecting our own struggles with ambition, desire, and the search for meaning. It forces us to ask whether knowledge is an end in itself, or if it must be tethered to a higher purpose, a deeper truth. Solomon's journey from a humble plea for wisdom to the jaded cry of vanity is perhaps the most profound lesson he has to offer. It teaches us that the greatest understanding is not the accumulation of facts or the mastery of statecraft, but the recognition of our own limitations in the face of the divine. Even wisdom must kneel to humility.